Hi, this is Sushant Verma. I'm the co-founder of ArtLab Studio and the founder of ArtLab.
I'm Tanya Gulati from ArtLab. I'm the brand manager for ArtLab.
ArtLab is the art installation vertical of ArtLab Studio, where we create parametric bespoke installations to create a luxurious and transformative piece in any space. And we've been doing installations of various kinds of all scales.
You need something iconic for your space, we create that for you. If you put up in a gallery, it won't be iconic anymore because everybody can get it, right? So we don't want that for ourselves and for you also. So that's where we come in, where you get unique, iconic, customized, bespoke installations. Like you have a space, you give us a blank canvas and you want to highlight it with something, or you want that space to fill up with something, anything. Or maybe you give us a blank canvas and you tell us like do something out of it. That's where we create a story for your space. We transform your space into something you would love.
12, 13 years back, when we put our first exhibition piece in Los Angeles, D2F, which was called Design to Fabrication, which really looked into creating an installation piece, which was a spatial installation made in metal, which we could use data to create the form, parametric design techniques to translate that into reality, which is where our journey started about ArtLab. 10 years down the line, we've done more than 50, 60 installations of different scales and different typologies. And that sort of developed to become our expertise, wherein we are doing a lot of art installations of different materials, which are inspired by nature or natural forms, have a certain narrative or a weaving around the brand or the space or the user for which we are creating it, and sort of translates that in a unique manner into an art installation. So when we look at any natural patterns, we have to understand that they have a very deeply engraved mathematics and algorithms within them. And I think it requires a very detailed lens to actually understand and decode them, and which is what we try to do. And in the process of doing that, computational design becomes our best ally and the tool to help us decode that geometry, simplify the mathematic complexity that exists in those geometries, and help us navigate that into an art piece. Typically, when we're designing an art installation, we work with different artists. We try to sketch out an idea. We try to create a canvas for us to create something unique. And mainly, we're looking at creating an installation which has an experience, which has a spatial experience around it. So the experience becomes extremely important. What is the user experience? How we are crafting it into the space. And right after we've done that, that's where we start to simplify that using computational design. So computational design, technology, everything starts to come together at this point to help us decode the complexity of natural forms and create that into a piece and into a narrative. We've done like a fluid wall for a brand, which is an international brand which shows luxury bath fittings. And we wanted to make sure that we create something which is absolutely unique, which is absolutely like water, which is sort of waves which are frozen, which is what our aquaMORPH also represents, but in a different articulation and a different materiality. We created a flower petal installation at the new terminal at the Bangalore airport, which was a collaboration with an artist and a sculptor, Kalyan, who had created and conceptualized the idea. It required a fine-tuned value engineering to create the art installation, which is where our role about value engineering comes into the picture. So we work with a lot of engineers, fabricators, to make sure that any art installation that we are designing gets executed in a manner where it's value engineered and it's able to sort of sustain for a long period of time. Few more examples I can give you: a lot of furniture and parametric benches that we've created over the years of different scales and sizes, and in materialities such as using wood, using stone, using any other solid surfaces, and be able to create that parametric form into stools and benches and tables and large scale installations as well.
So as the name suggests, aquaMORPH. So it was derived from water, no ripple effect or the flows of the water, how it flows. It's a geometric pattern basically. When you start finding geometry in nature, you'll be fascinated. So our founder, Mr. Sushant Verma, was very fascinated by it. He used to look everything from a very different angle, geometrically. Even leaf is a geometry to him. That's what Art Lab is about, geometry and nature.
This is a part of the aquaMORPH, and it's like a fluidic piece which is actually made in a solid surface, but it has the tactility that it will allow you to sort of touch and feel the surface, and the way that the light bounces off it creates a very magical effect. The mirrors that we have in golden color are reflecting light, and that allows to create a spectacle of water and flow and motion, and these waves are sort of liquefying in a manner. And liquefaction process of geometry is not that straightforward, so we had to actually write an algorithm where we worked with a very rigid grid, fluidified the grid, and then converted that into these curves which create that liquefied form. And once we are doing that process, we sort of freeze that in time to capture the essence of that, and that gets converted into a three-dimensional form, after which the technology is used where we mill the entire solid surface into this pattern with the inlays, and then each of the pieces sort of cut as per the size, handcrafted and inlaid by a specialized person to create this artistic piece. How the light reacts to this, how when one passes through the piece might think that this is very dynamic, because it is creating an effect which is dynamic. However, it is a static piece, but how the light falls on it and how when one walks around it, you create this morphed grid. So aquaMORPH sort of creates a very interesting effect in any space. This is something which we're using in many of our projects. We're using this as a centerpiece, as a masterpiece, to create a highlight in a living room space. We're also using it in the reception space of an office space, and we're creating different iterations of this with the algorithm that we have created. And at the same time, we are also exploring different materialities of how different materials can create a different texture, different color, how it responds to different light effects, and sort of integrating all of that into a one piece. So when we started, almost 10 years back, when we started to do art installations, in fact, one of our first pieces was in 2015 in one of the galleries at Allianz Français in Delhi, where we were asked to put up a prototype of our work. And we were actually looking at a facade project that time, and we integrated that into an art installation, which was a green installation flowing in 20 feet high and floating in the space. It was called cellular morphology facade, is what we called it. And it had about 6,000 hexagonal pieces, all of them different shaped and handcrafted, laser cut, hand folded, hand stitched together to create a full wave. And that's pretty much where we realize the potential that anything that we're doing with complex geometries has to be well engineered and has to be well detailed. So we really look into details in a perfect manner where we have to make sure that details are working pretty fine. We do a lot of prototyping, we do a lot of testing. There is a lot of R&D that goes behind creating different pieces and the installations that we do. We sometimes 3D print a prototype, a detail. We sometimes laser cut something. We would CNC something to create a piece. We would hand cut something. And it's all about creating a narrative around research and building the research to see how we can use materials in different ways. But one thing is certain, that it has to be well engineered. And engineering is not something which is just about the structure. It has to be about the detailing. It has to be, the best of the engineering is something which you never see. And that's what I truly believe in. And art has a lot of hidden engineering. At least the art that we do, it has a lot of hidden engineering. And the best of the engineering is the one which you will not see. So you will not see the detailing, you will not see the nuts and bolts, you will not see the numbering process, you will not see the sequencing of thousands of objects put together. All you would see is the art and the experience around it. But the common thing in all of them is the engineering that goes behind it. And I think that's pretty much what we really proud ourselves with, that we are able to do that value engineering because we have had a very strong understanding of geometry, mathematics, and writing codes and algorithms to create the art in a similar way how we are doing our facades and large scale projects. So when people come to us and say parametric design, we have to take a backseat to understand that what is the experience that one has to create or one is seeking. And then we try to work with very contemporary kind of a language, trying to create it very, very minimalistic. At some points in some project to integrate more of an intricate touch into artifacts that we create, which is a lot to do with a little bold geometry, looking at a cultural narrative around it, try to work with geometry which allow you to play within that framework and that canvas. But mostly we try to work with contemporary geometries and forms, try to keep it very simple, because all of our art installations typically would have one USP, where one thing becomes a highlight of that particular art piece, which could be a geometry, which could be the materiality, which could be the innovation in which the material has been used in that geometry. So as a combination of all of that, that's pretty much where we see the magic happening. And I think the trends are changing over time, but one thing is certain, that geometries will always be a part of art in some way or the other, at least the kind of art that we create and we try to integrate in our projects. And yeah, I think it's really trending right now, and hopefully we'll be able to do some absolutely stunning art pieces soon. You have to understand and decode the process of fabrication firstly. So whenever we are designing something, we have to understand how exactly will it be fabricated. Technology can help us in the manufacturing process, but perhaps like 40 to 50%, I would say. The rest of it has to be done and crafted by hand. So we work with artisans who sort of specialize in different kind of crafts. If we are using metal bending, for example, we would use the tool for bending, but we would also rely on the person who's doing the bending. How do we transmit the information to the person to bend it by either 30-degree angle or 35-degree angle or 40-degree angle? So technology can allow you to measure that angle, but it is the crafting that is required, which allows you to actually integrate that into an object. We're working with one of the temple projects in Delhi, which is going to be an iconic and unique unveil of what parametric design and craft can actually do together, because we're actually taking inspiration from a very mythological perspective, understanding the narrative and the history and the culture behind it, and trying to convert that into installations which create an experience for the users. And I think that's something which is quite exciting for us, because as a studio we're able to do installations of different kinds. We've also worked with fashion designers, creating an experience center, work with creating a perfumery, which we created, again with the sectioning process, which we typically use in parametric design. Then we also work with a lot of stone. So again, material is sort of secondary to us. The first thing that is absolutely important is the geometry. So once we rationalize the geometry, once we optimize the geometry for fabrication, after that we look into the materiality, and we try to use materials in the ways not being used before. Ideally, if you look at water, I'll give you an example. If I'm beach looking at the waves of water, I think conventionally somebody would look at the waves in a different way. I would rather look at the waves in terms of what is the sequence of pattern that the waves create. And typically it's a Fibonacci pattern that follows. So there is a mathematical pattern. You will have one big wave, then one wave will skip the big wave. You'll have two big waves together, then it'll skip for 3 times. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. That's the sequence that follows. So it's a Fibonacci pattern being followed. And you can sort of articulate that with the sound of water that you listen to as well. And normally we don't understand these things, but everything in nature that we see is mathematical. Then you see a Voronoi pattern. Voronoi pattern can be observed in leaves, on the shell of a tortoise, on the wings of a dragonfly. All of these are absolutely geometric patterns which you see. If you look at jackfruit has a Voronoi and hexagonal pattern. You see a honeybee structure, honeycomb. That's the most stable structural system in nature, and that is a hexagon. So we end up actually creating a lot of inspiration from these natural systems and patterns. Then we start to decode that, and this is where first part is obviously taking the inspiration, second part is decoding these geometries, and that's where technology helps us to create a digital articulated version of that. We write an algorithm which allows us to create that art. But art is not created by technology. Art is created through inspiration, a lot of hand sketching, a lot of experimentation, a lot of scribbles that goes behind the scenes always to create an idea, which can create an emotional experience. And I think only after that, we start to look into technology and bring in technology to help us create a system which can be fabricated, which can be sculpted, which can be constructed in a manner which creates an impact and unique impact, which ends up having a wow value to it, and creating a wow factor.
So Art Lab stands out because one, we do bespoke installations. We don't have any sort of gallery or anything that we have some prior curated designs and we want you to put that up. You come to us, you give us a space, you want to curate that space into something that you have in your mind, and you share that idea with us, and we give you our ideas, we align our ideas with each other, and we give you something that will transform your space according to you, but with Art Lab.
Art is pretty powerful. Art is pretty strong in terms of creating an impact. You can really accentuate a space in unique ways if you can work with sort of complexity, which is what our expertise is. We can use an understanding of mathematics and algorithms to weave that into an artistic narrative, which can at the same time create a spatial articulation, which can accentuate a space and absolutely transform it. And that's pretty much what we've been doing. The piece is called aquaMORPH. It's a piece which is crafted as frozen waves, I would say, which is where the water is in motion, but it is frozen to create an impact. And I think the whole idea, the narrative around it is also pretty much about water being frozen and waves being frozen in a manner. Create that morphed effect of the grids. The second aspect, when you break a pattern of a water or a flow of liquid, is looking at a grid. How a grid is morphed into a curvilinear form. Now, curves are very essential to create a fluidic effect, and it has a psychological impact on one when you're experiencing it, when you're looking at these curves and waves, which is sort of like a frozen motion, I would say. The other aspect that we looked into in this piece is how it reflects light. So there is an impact of light as well, where the piece has a perception of being kinetic because it feels that it is in motion because things are moving as you move across it. However, we are trying to use lighting in a manner where it creates an impact of being kinetic, where everything is in motion. At the same time, we're using a material which is very, very natural, and again creating that impact of, creating a tactile effect in terms of you can really touch the material and feel the art in a manner. And then you have these splashes of golden glow, which is the most interesting aspect, which is created in a gradient manner. And we see all of these gradient in nature. We've just decoded that and sort of frozen that movement in space to create an art installation which can accentuate any space. We've taken a lot of inspiration from nature, tried to decode a part of the natural system into certain geometries, weave that into a narrative where the art is not just sitting there as an object, but creating an impact. It's sort of interacting with people, sometimes emotionally, sometimes, invoking a thought which could allow a user or somebody experiencing the art in the space think more and think beyond what they are seeing. So I think any art is supposed to sort of make you a little uncomfortable in terms of asking questions. So whenever I experience any art anywhere, I end up thinking about it, like what is the meaning behind it? What is the story behind it? What is the narrative? What was the artist thinking? What is the medium used? How was it fabricated? How was it created? How was it conceptualized? So all of these things actually are sort of answered in the piece that we typically create. So whenever you're working on a particular art installation, the idea is to create a piece which can transform this, whereas the space can be absolutely minimalistic, and we have one iconic piece which can accentuate the space, create an emotional experience for the users around. And when we talk of the emotional experience, the geometry plays a key role. All of us get intrigued with geometry of different kinds. And I think the moment we associate a geometry with a natural pattern or natural system, the moment it starts to give us, a feedback to our mind of that it is inspired from nature in some way or the other, that's where it becomes interesting. And that's pretty much what we try to do in every art installation that we do. At the same time, we try to also incorporate the brand identity into the art installation. If you're working for a corporate client, for example, we would create the art installation which has some sort of a meaning with the brand itself. What is the brand story? What is the brand language? How do we articulate that with a material which has not been done before? And that's pretty much the process that we follow.